and then more MAGA. At the Republican National Convention just last month, not a single former Republican president or nominee was present. A stark contrast from the Democrats hosting their party's standard bearers, one after the other, in abundance, night after night. But the speakers at this year's DNC will also showcase the ever-expanding and young coalition that Harris is amassing. In addition to Democratic stalwarts, Senators Chuck Schumer and Bernie Sanders, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, and both Obamas speaking tonight, the Republican mayor of Mesa, Arizona, John Giles, will also speak, one of several Republicans set to deliver remarks this week. And speaking of the Republican National Convention, tonight Kamala Harris and Tim Walz will hold a rally in the very same arena where the Republican National Convention was held. As the New York Times reports, quote, Ms. Harris's choice of venue is the latest in a series of aggressive moves that seem designed to get under Mr. Trump's notoriously thin skin. This marks Harris's third time in battleground Wisconsin since announcing her campaign. As new polling has shown, she has even, quote, reshaped the terrain of 2024 and thrust the Sun Belt back to the center of the battleground state map. And we've just learned from reporting by Reuters that Harris has raised around $500 million since she got into the race. That was 1 month ago, folks. It's where we start the hour with the Harris-Walz Battleground State Director, Dan Kennanen. I name-checked you already. I'm glad to get to talk to you. I was talking to Dan Pfeiffer about the enthusiasm. Literally, I'm in New York. Yeah. It beams out of the room, and I think is reaching people in their living rooms. But that enthusiasm, absent a strategic, high-tech ground game, dissipates. How do you sort of catch this lightning in a bottle and operationalize it and pull it through Election Day as part of your battleground state ground game?
Thanks, Nicolle. It's great to be here, first of all. And yes, it's beaming through this room, and it's beaming in the battleground states, almost more importantly. As you said, the vice president's in Milwaukee tonight, where there's going to be a huge and I think very enthusiastic crowd for her and for Governor Walz. And you're absolutely correct. The enthusiasm is palpable. The energy is fantastic. But if we don't do something with it, if we don't channel it into action that is communicating to other voters, that continues to build our organization, it's an organism that needs to have care. That's how you actually build something inclusive that can win elections. I'm a big believer in shared stakes creates more compelling action. And so the campaign that we're doing, 2,800 events just this last weekend, in the weekend leading up to convention, tied to this convention, designed to get thousands and thousands of folks out there, 1 million voter contact attempts, 3 million doors in July and August, all part of a plan designed to win close races in these states that require people on the ground to do just that.
As a point of personal privilege, as a partisan Warriors fan, when Coach Kerr said, I'm going to spend every day between now and Election Day trying to get out the vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, I was like, what are they going to have him do? I mean, what are you going to use sort of super surrogates to do?
Yeah, well, I mean, both President Biden and Steve Kerr offered to be volunteers, which is pretty great for me. That's a great thing to work with. But look, I think everyone that gets out there and can communicate with people the stakes in the election and draw a bridge to people coming into this organization can be really effective. They can be great messengers, obviously. But I think it's that welcome door that creates the infrastructure, that uses the infrastructure to create more momentum that we really want to see. So I think whether it's President Biden on the trail or Coach Kerr, maybe Coach Kerr and Coach Walz, who knows, but we'll get out there as often as we can to build that kind of enthusiasm.
So one of the pieces of evidence that the January 6th Select Committee developed was that as early as the summer before the 2020 election, Tom Fitton had sent an email to the White House talking about how to not accept the results of the election. And for Trump, the thing that was happening politically is that his polls didn't look good. What do you anticipate sort of beyond trying to prevail among the voters in terms of legal or illegal or election denialism or stacking these election boards. I mean, what is sort of the whiteboard look like in terms of what Trump might do if the polls continue to go in your direction and not his?
Well, look, first of all, Nicolle, I'll say it's going to be a close race, as nice as the polls are, and we do feel like there's some validation that the plan is working and the enthusiasm is real. But I just expect a close race in all these states, and so we're girding ourselves for that eventuality. And on the point about the potential to have election interference or to cast doubt on the validity of the election, nothing like experience, Nicolle. We saw this in 2020, and I think we were pretty prepared to deal with it then, and I think effectively did deal with it in 2020 despite all that transpired. But now we're even more prepared, and there's been a legal and voter protection operation built earlier in this campaign than any other that I can remember. It's both thinking about voting access, sites, hours, methods of voting for voters, making it evident that it's clear, it's safe, it's secure, but then also on the back end, ensuring that the law will be followed, elections will be certified. It's a robust operation, but it just reminds me of all we have to do to win an election that we know will be quite close.
You know, you have all of the stars in the Democratic Party across the ideological and geographical and generational spectrum. But I am keeping my own little list of all the Republicans popping up this week. Stephanie Grisham will be there. Adam Kinzinger will be there. Arizona Mayor John Giles, who was at the Arizona events last week. It is clear that the political operation is intent on turning out sort of a coalition of support. Can you tell me more about the permission structure for sort of disaffected Republicans?
Well, all those folks you mentioned, Nicolle, also Jeff Duncan from Georgia, who was with us at the rally in Atlanta about 2 weeks ago. It's an important part of the strategy. We want to be a party that can work for all Americans. That's the entire message here. This is about people. It's about core freedoms. It's about our future. And that does not have a partisan lens to it. That's about America and what this country can promise to folks. And it's in stark contrast, by the way, to what we see from Donald Trump and MAGA Republicans, whether you're talking about Mark Robinson or Kerry Lake or Trump himself. Just this week, he's saying he has no regrets on his actions on Roe. Today, he refused to condemn KKK marchers in Michigan. There is such a stark divide between what he does and what he says and what mainstream Americans want to see out of their elected leaders. They want to see the optimism and the joy and the focus on issues, like the focus on lowering costs that the vice president had made a day one priority in this campaign. That, I think, besides the joy, besides the enthusiasm, a message that resonates with Americans who simply want their government to work for them and work for all people and not be partisan and not be mean and not be nasty. I think we can deliver that with the speakers we have on stage tonight, but more importantly, we can deliver it with the campaign we have on the ground in all those states, 300 offices and 1,600 staff and tens of thousands of volunteers sharing in that ethos.
People don't land in jobs like yours without having a mind that whirls 24/7. What is the thing that whirls in your mind when you're trying to go to sleep or when you're, out of cell range and have to write it down? I mean, what are the things that worry you?
Yeah, I think it is creating the operation and growing it still to meet what is a tremendous demand to be involved in this campaign. And that demand, I think, is not predictive of a victory, Nicolle, but it is something that we need to work with, and it's an imperative for us to ensure that people have a place in this campaign and can carry that forward. So I want to race and keep up with where America wants to go with this campaign and ensure the infrastructure we have is there to meet it, to channel it, to turn it into action, and to talk to voters wherever they are so that we can persuade every single person we need to win those close states.
Yeah, only campaign people know what a nightmare it is when someone calls and wants to help and you don't have like an immediate answer for how they help. I know what you're talking about.
Yes.
Dan Cannon, thank you for taking some time to start us off this hour. Great to talk to you. Good luck this week.
Thank you, Nicolle. Good to see you.
Let me bring into our conversation one of our favorites, NBC News political correspondent Jacob Soboroff, back on the floor of the convention. I have to ask you, did you get in trouble for messing with that telephone?
Not yet, but I've been requesting access to the boiler room, Nicolle, and it has not yet been approved by the Democratic National Committee. So maybe, I'm not sure.
All right, well, keep me out of it. I'm gonna disown you if they ask you who you were on the air with.
You're in New York. You got nothing to worry about, Nicolle.
All right, what do you got today?
let me start here, but I was listening to your conversation with Dan, and I want to get into election interference. And actually, I want to take a walk over to Georgia in a second, just based on the conversation that you were having. But I don't know what this is about, but this wasn't here yesterday. This is the beginning of the California delegation, and there's a lot of reserve seats. You guys know what's up with the reserve seats in the delegation? Okay, so the big shots in California have now got reserve seats here. I don't know who's coming. I saw Governor Newsom show up at the end of last night, but this is a place to keep an eye. Hi, how are you guys? A place to keep. Let's say, you want to say hello real quick? Say hi to Nicolle Wallace. We're live on MSNBC.
Hi, Nicolle Wallace. How are you?
How are you?
Nicolle. We're from Philly.
They're from Philly.
I love
She says,
Philly.
how are you? You guys doing all right?
We're doing great.
She's a big fan of Philly. Okay, nice to see you guys. Have fun. Okay, Nicolle, let's go back to Georgia because that conversation was so interesting. And sorry to do this while I'm walking, but you know, I was just reading Lisa Rubin's article on MSNBC.com about what's going on with this Georgia State Election Board and these 3 commissioners that former President Trump has been praising as pit bulls for the actions they're taking, allowing them to potentially slow the count of the votes and review the votes. I want to talk to people back here if they are actually concerned about what they think might ultimately be the outcome of the election in Georgia, given how narrow that margin was in 2020. So it looks like there's a couple of folks here from Georgia right now, and let me just see if I can. And
Jacob, ask them if they know that their Republican lieutenant governor is speaking there tonight.
Okay, I will. It's a great point. Thank you. Are you guys Georgia delegates?
Yes, we are.
Do you know that your Republican lieutenant governor is speaking here tonight?
Yes.
You you really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Did you? Come on over, sir. Jacob Soboroff. We're live on MSNBC. What's your name?
Al Williams from Midway, Georgia.
So, what are your thoughts on your lieutenant governor being up on the stage?
Great guy. I served with him. We were on the different sides of several issues. He was in the majority. I was in the minority. But Jeff was always a stand-up guy, and I've been really impressed with his courage. I think a lot about him.
Let's talk about what's going on with your state election board, because there's a lot of concern.
That's a whole new story.
A whole new story. Former President Trump, has praised these commissioners as pit bulls. They made some changes that a lot of folks think, in particular the Harris campaign, we were just talking with them here on MSNBC, Nicolle Wallace was, that could affect the outcome of the election. Are you guys concerned about potential election interference in Georgia, given how close the margin?
We are. The patients have taken over the asylum.
Taken over the asylum.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
What can be done in Georgia to fight back against this? How are you all? I mean, you all have your one vote, but what is to be done in Georgia, given the actions that have been taken by the board?
Well, I work in the civic engagement space, and there are organizations that are currently filing lawsuits right now to take this stuff out, because this is, what the state election board's passing is ridiculous. And we're trying to stop this because we know that Georgia is going to help deliver for Vice President Harris. And we know for a fact that they're going to try as hard as they can to prevent Vice President Harris from getting in. But we know we're going to do the work on the ground to get folks out to vote for her.
I appreciate that, you guys. Thank you very much for talking to me. It's really nice to meet you.
I have one more question.
Nicole's got another question for you. Go ahead, Nicolle.
Shame on